we're going to cook some delicious apple oatmeal cookies. So if you're interested, stay tuned.
Well, we have checked our list, we've looked at our calendars, and we've also looked at our little book. We've got groceries already picked up and in the pantry, and you know what? We are ready to move smoothly into the month of August and throughout. So now let's get to those apple oatmeal cookies.
Hello, I'm Leona Dooley, and this is Ebony, Ivy, and Thyme in the kitchen. And today in the kitchen, we are going to prepare something wonderful. And in fact, we're going to prepare some cookies. What better thing to do? Now, you know, we're coming into a big apple season, and we are really looking forward to a lot of fresh apples. I just happened to pick up some the other day, and I thought, apples. And I was thinking of all kinds of things that I could do with these apples. And I've got plans for you and ideas for you that you can prepare for your family. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Ebony, Ivy, and Thyme, because it's here where we work hard, we love God and family, and we know without a doubt that everything else is just gravy. And at Ebony, Ivy, and Thyme, not only are we preparing meals, but we're also decorating and creating some things that will be fun and make you and your family smile. Also, at Ebony, Ivy, and Thyme, we put together these tablescapes. And you know, some of the tablescapes are a little off the chart, while others are just very simple but beautiful. Some of them are more elegant, but those are the kinds of things that we do here in the kitchen. Now, so I'm hoping that you, if you are not already a subscriber, that you will stop right now and hit that subscribe button, because we are going to have fun right here in this kitchen, because I love fall and we're going to be doing all kinds of things for fall. Also, if you are a family member, then thank you very much. And I really appreciate the fact that you stay with me, stay tuned, and that you watch the videos. Now, one thing, I am trying to build this channel. And so in order to do that, I'm asking that you will take the time, hit that notification bell, and tune in. Because when you watch, there are little people out there who are watching, not watching you watch, but they know that someone has been watching the videos. And I hope you'll take the time to watch as well. So the longer you watch, the better it is. So we're accumulating lots of watch hours. Now, so I am thanking you for supporting me. Now, also, keep this in mind, that in the description box, or in that box, that you will find recipes. And that's where I put the recipes. I'm planning a cookbook. And so one of these days, I'm going to have a little announcement to let you know that cookbooks are available. But I hope that you will enjoy every moment, because I enjoy having you in the kitchen. So blessings to you, and stay tuned, because we're going to have a good time right here in the kitchen.
One of the best things about fall are the fragrances, and especially in the kitchen. It's the apple, it's the pumpkin, it's the cardamom, it's the anise, it's the cinnamon, and oh, I could just go on. Even the orange and the lemons and all of those fragrances just almost, if you have too much, will overwhelm your senses. But you know, in just the right dose, it's perfect. Now, we are going to be working on some apple cinnamon, some apple oatmeal cookies. And yes, they do have cinnamon. And I tell you what, these cookies are absolutely delicious. They will fly off your table. And in fact, they may not even make it to your table. Once your family smells those cookies, then everyone will be standing there waiting for you to take that pan out, because that's exactly what happens in my house. They smell divine, and the flavor is even better. And when they just almost literally melt in your mouth, then you know you've done a good thing. So what we're doing today, first of all, I had a couple bags of apples that I had gotten from the market, and I'm just going to peel these apples, and as you can see, they're small, but you know what? I need to peel them, I need to dice them, and then I'm going to measure out what I need. But you know what I'm going to do special with these this time? Sometimes I just take the raw apple and grate it very finely and put it into the apple. And while that's good, I'm going to kick it up to another level, because we are going to caramelize these apples by putting them on the stove in some butter and the apples and some brown sugar, and we're going to let them cook for about 15 minutes. Now, we don't want them to cook down so that they're down to nothing. We're not trying to make applesauce. But what we are trying to do is to brown and to caramelize that brown sugar onto those little pieces of apple. Now, when you dice these, you're going to want to dice them pretty small, because remember, they're going into a cookie. But keep in mind that as they cook and they lose their liquid, they're going to shrink. So when you first put them into your measuring cup, measure out about 3 cups of cubed apples, because when you're finished, you're going to have the perfect amount of apples for your cookies. Now, since I was in cutting mode, I thought, well, I might as well cut up the rest of the apples, because they're going to have to be taken care of anyway. So I washed those apples as well. I had another whole bag of about anywhere from 12 to 15 apples. So I actually peeled and sliced and diced those apples in addition to the ones I had done first. Now, what we are doing is that we're just making preparations for today as well as another day. And you know my philosophy. If you're slicing, dicing, cutting, whatever it is, and you have extra, go ahead and do what you need to do with it. Go ahead and do the prep if possible, so that the next time you need whatever that item is, they're already taken care of. And you know, apples and apple pie. I will throw in some Granny Smiths or some other apples in with this mix, and oh my goodness, we are talking about a delicious apple pie, or we may even do an apple pandowdy just to kick things up a notch. But you know what? It's all about the family and getting that family happy. I try to prepare a dessert on Sunday, and I always want that Sunday dessert to be something that's pretty easy. I don't usually bake on Sunday, so whatever I'm going to prepare is usually already put together by the time Sunday comes, and that makes it very easy for me to serve my family a dessert. Now, so I want you to check out the knife that I've been using. This particular knife is in my Amazon store, and it is the best little knife. I tell you what, I have used this knife day in and day out for at least 6 years. It never needs sharpening, and I tell you what, don't get your finger in the way, because whatever's in the way is going to get cut. It is the best knife ever. And you know, if you have one, you only need one of them, because you know, at first I thought, well, I'll buy two. No, one is enough. I tested that first one and I have been so happy. So I'm telling you, if you want a good cutting knife, and as you can see, it sits well in your hand, it's easy for you to operate, and it's just a great all around and fairly inexpensive knife, because you know knives are terribly expensive when you get a really, really good knife. And so this knife I like because it's under $10, and it lasts for a very long time. So it's a great tool to use. I also have my little scraper. Now my scraper I do have to replace probably every 3 years. But you know what, it's a little Kitchenaid scraper, but I tell you what, it peels everything, anything and everything that I need, and it's certainly worth the time and the money. But you know, Kitchenaid puts out a good product, so woohoo for Kitchenaid. Now let's go over to that stove, because it's time to put things together and get them into the pot and onto the stove. So we're going to do that. Now I'm going to use one of my little small pots. I'm going to add in a couple of tablespoons of baking powder, brown sugar, and I'm also going to add in a pinch of salt, because you know the salt brings out the sweetness. I'm also going to use about 4 teaspoons or more of butter, and you can decide if you want a little extra, but it just ends up down in the syrup, and so you know you really don't need any more than about 4 teaspoons of butter. You can decide whether or not you want to use unsalted or salted. My butter I usually buy is salted, so that's the reason why I'm only using a pinch of salt. So when you take it over to the stove, you're going to get it nice and hot. You want to keep it on kind of a medium to a medium high, and you're going to start to cook and to caramelize these apples. They are going to be delicious. At this point I have apples in my pot that I'm going to be putting on the stove, and I also have apples that are off to the side, so that I'm going to get those all sweetened up with a little brown sugar as well, put another little pinch of salt, and we are going to bag these. But I'm not going to bag them until I finish caramelizing the first batch of apples, because what we are going to have to do is to pour off the juices from the apples that we cook. So I'm going to take those juices and pour them over these apples that are sitting off to the side, so that while they're in the freezer, they're going to be getting that caramelized flavor. They're going to be tasty as well, just even coming straight out of the freezer. What better way to do it? So let's continue. These apples are going to need to cook on the stove probably anywhere from, say, 10 to 15 minutes, maybe even a little longer. I put my setting on about a medium, and that's because I didn't want them to caramelize, but I was doing other things, so I knew I was not going to stand over them. So every now and then I can just walk over, give them a couple of turns to see how they're doing, and also checking the texture of the apples, because I do want them to be able to hold their shapes, and even though the outside of the apple is going to be well caramelized. And I'm just going to let this stay on the stove while I'm working on the actual base of the cookie. So it's going to be good and it's going to be delicious. Now let me remind you of something. Please be sure that if you are new to my channel, that you will take a moment and subscribe, and that if you are having a good time here in the kitchen with me, that you'll also like the video by clicking on that thumbs up. And if you really enjoy these videos, you're going to want to go to my playlist for last year's fall comfort foods, and also this year's I Love Fall. Now let's start measuring. I am using self-rising flour. I purposely stuck that piece of paper in there so that I would remind myself that that's what I had in the container. And I'm using self-rising because of the fact that it already has the baking soda and a little bit of salt in it. You can do this with all-purpose flour, and I'm measuring out about 1.5 cups, exactly 1.5 cups to be exact, of your flour. And you know, self-rising flour is great. It just kind of saves you a couple of steps. And since we have salt with apples, and there will be just enough salt in this flour so that I don't need to add any additional. Now, I've taken out butter to make sure that my butter is, I thought it was going to be soft enough, but guess what? It was still pretty hard. So I am in the process of putting it out on a plate that I'm going to sit in the microwave for about 10 to 15 seconds and let it soften. And then we'll add it into our mix. I'm getting a larger bowl because I can already see that I'm going to need a little more space. Now, so we have, at this point, I need 1 cup of butter, and we're going to put that in. So let me get everything all together. Let me make sure I have all of my ingredients close. I've got my ground cinnamon. I've got granulated sugar. We're going to use some brown sugar as well as granulated sugar. So we're going, in the larger bowl, we're going to beat that sugar and the butter and the eggs all together. So I'm getting the eggs so that we need 2. Now, under the perfect situation and in the perfect circumstances, the eggs would have already been out. They would have been room temperature, but you know what? That didn't work for me today. So that's, you know, we're dealing with it, and we're going to measure out what we need. Now, so for the granulated sugar that you see here, we're going to need a 1/4 cup. So let's get that measured out. And I'm careful with the measurements because, of course, the cookies, you want them sweet, but you don't want them overly sweet. And I need 1 full cup of brown sugar. So I'm putting my top back on, keeping things handy just in case. I've got my recipe right there close, and we're going to measure out the cinnamon. I need about 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, but I used a heaping teaspoon because I like the cinnamony flavor and smell. So not enough to overdo, but enough to make me happy. So let's get that butter. So I'm taking the first stick of butter out of the microwave and moving on to the second. So I've added those into the mix. So I'm trying to get that brown sugar, because you know what brown sugar does. It can get stuck and get hard, but it didn't. It was just a matter of my being able to reach it. It didn't want to move, so I am working on that. So I've got a little 1/2 cup measure, and actually it's a 1/4 cup measure, and so I need 4 scoops. So let's see if we can get all 4, and I won't have to use the knife again, because that's what happens. So I know now I need to refill that, so that's why I'm keeping it handy. And So let's check our butter, make sure we've got everything where we want it. I'm going to fold that wrapper over and run my finger down it so I'm sure to get everything, all of the butter out of there. And if I wasn't thinking at that point, because most of the time what I do with those wrappers is to put them in the freezer, and when I need to grease a pan, I'll pull a couple of those wrappers out and use that to grease the pan. So it works perfectly. But you know, right now my freezer is prime property. I've got it stuffed. So for that reason, I didn't do that this time. So there are the eggs. Let me get my favorite hand mixer, which is my little Kitchenaid hand mixer. And we are going to get this all beat up and ready to go. This little Kitchenaid is great. It goes everywhere, and I can transfer it from one house to another and just plug it in and go. If you don't have a hand mixer, you certainly want one. And they're not real expensive. You know, of course you can buy expensive ones, but I always buy at least medium priced mixer. Now sometimes I have to tell you, all of these little hand mixers have a 1-year guarantee. So, you know, sometimes you have to think about that. If you're going to have to buy another one in the next, say, 1.5 to 2 years, it may not matter what the name is. But, you know, Kitchenaid is very dependable. And I have even called them and complained, and they have sent me another product. So I tell you what, I stay with them. I have a lot of Kitchenaid products right in my kitchen because they are dependable. So let's beat those eggs, get it all good and mixed up so that it's nice and creamy. And I'm looking for my spatula so that I can go around the sides and make sure that I have everything in the mix. Now, this part of the mixture you could mix all day and it will not affect the texture of your cookies. But once you put the flour into the mix, then that's when you're not going to want to mix for a long time. Because if you mix for a long time, it's going to make those cookies tough. And you do not want tough cookies. So we've got this part taken care of, and I'm looking over at the stove to see how those apples are going. Ooh, they look pretty good. They're nice and hot. So what we're going to have to do is to pour the juice off of the cookies. And I'm going to use that, and I'm going to actually pour the juice over the apples the extra apples. And the reason for doing that is so that they will have additional flavor as well. And this gives me an opportunity to work with the apples that are going to go into our cookies. So I'm getting a paper towel, and I got 4 little pieces of paper towel and a paper plate. And what we're going to do is that we're going to take these apples that we caramelized, and we're going to pour them out on the paper towel. Now we're trying to get as much moisture off the apples as we possibly can. So you'll see them kind of shaking them and patting them. You're not going to get them totally dry, but you are going to be able to get them pretty dry. So I'm going to let them sit there for a few moments, and then we'll add them to the cookie batter. So let's let them cool, let them release whatever extra juices they may have, and just get everything ready for the cookie batter. So let's get to let's see, what else did I need? Let's see. We need oats. Now, my favorite oats are Quaker oats. Guys, Quaker oats been around a long time, and Quaker oats are good. And I'm using the old-fashioned oats, okay? Old-fashioned Quaker oats. this little Kitchenaid is doing a great job. And you're going to see that for a while, the mixture of the flour and the base that we had with the sugars and the butter and the eggs, that it's going to get a little bit thick, but that's okay. And I'm going to every now and then use my scraper and scrape it down. Now, I forgot to add the vanilla at the beginning, and so I had to go back and add it in. It doesn't matter really when you add it in. You just have to remember to make sure you put the vanilla in it, because otherwise it is going to totally change the taste. Now, I did decide to add a little more cinnamon. I put that cinnamon in there, but I needed a little more, so I'm just going to kick it up a notch, because I really should be able to smell the cinnamon at this point, and it may be, I thought this was a pretty new container of cinnamon, but maybe not. So I'm adding my flour in thirds. So, when you only have a cup and a half, it goes pretty quickly, so thirds are pretty small. So I am taking that last little bit of flour and just working it in. Now remember, this is on the lowest setting of this hand mixer, and I'm just blending it enough until I get everything all together. Now I need 3 cups of Quaker oats. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to measure that out right here into the bowl. That's 1, 2, and we need another one. I love Quaker oats. And 3. And if you're a fan of oats, of course, and if you're like me, I sometimes like to add a little extra roughage into my cookies, just so that the family has plenty of roughage in their diet. And so I do a lot of things with old-fashioned oats. You'll be surprised. And this is a good place to be able to camouflage a lot. If you wanted to add in some flaxseed or any of that, you could certainly put it into these cookies and it would work out very well. Just add a couple of tablespoons in, and your family will never know unless you tell them. So I'm trying to make sure I put the tops on everything, because if I don't, I'm going to turn something over. I remember I had these Trader Joe's raisins. Oh my goodness, they are a medley of raisins, and they're jumbo raisins. They're huge. So I only needed 1 big handful of raisins. And now we're going to add the best part of these cookies, and that is the apples. So I thought I'd be real industrious and put them in with my cup, but you know what? I'm going to end up just pouring them in. There they go. They're into the mix. Everybody's in the pool. So now we've still got our mixer on low, and in fact I had to cut it up 1 more, because this is really our last mix. And we're just going to make sure that the raisins and apples are well distributed. Now I could have stopped it there and done this part by hand, but I had the mixer. Why not? Why not use it? We've got it. We've got tools, and we're going to use them. So here we go. We're going to put this together. Now guys, you see how loose this cookie batter is? We are going to get some parchment paper, because this batter needs to be refrigerated. And what I've decided to do is that I'm going to make it easy when it's time to cut the cookies and to get them onto the pan. So what I'm doing is that I'm spreading out the parchment paper, and I'm going to make a log of cookie batter. And actually I'm going to make 2. And then I'm going to put them into the refrigerator until I'm ready to cook them. And then I'll just slice off what I want. And the other part is going to go in the freezer, unless I have some extra people here, which I probably won't, because we're in the middle of a pandemic. So I'm just tucking this parchment paper and making that log, and I'm just going to twist the ends There we go. Give them a good twist so they'll stay. And tighten that log up. And that's log 1. And that's going into the refrigerator so it can start to stiffen. And what will also happen is that when you bake it, if you bake it without the refrigerator part, the cookies are going to spread all over the pan. And so you don't want that to happen. So we are going to put them into the refrigerator. We're going to make our logs so that when it's time to bake these cookies, it's going to be so easy. Now, you know what? This is a great idea. You know, I'm always thinking ahead. But we do this a lot, or I do it a lot for Christmas. And I'll actually bake a portion, and I'll put another portion into a log, so that when it's time for a holiday and I need cookies, all I have to do is go take a log out, let it sit out for a little while, and start to slice. And I have my own slice and bake cookies. I'd like to say that we're ready to put everything into the oven, but that's not the case, because we're going to have to let these get nice and firm in the refrigerator. You know, an hour could do it, but if you want to do these the day before, or even in the morning of the day before you bake them, then that's the perfect option. Do them early, and then by the afternoon you can bake them. They're pretty solid, and in fact you really could stick them in the freezer as long as you don't forget. So I'm going to get them into the into the refrigerator, and we are going to be ready to put those cookies away. Now I'm trying to find a pan that's the perfect size. It's not going to be too large for the refrigerator and sit it on a shelf. So I'll get everything put back, and we are going to be ready to bake some cookies. Now, you know, off to the side I have those extra apples, and here's our Ziploc bag, because we're going to stick those apples into the Ziploc bag. This is just enough for another batch of cookies if you want to make cookies, or you could add more cookies to it and make up something else. You could even prepare muffins. I have a recipe for apple pecan muffin that is so delicious. So if you wanted to use these for that, certainly use those for your next batch. Now here's those Trader Joe jumbo raisins and the Quaker oats. And I'm going to say to you that you are going to want to prepare these cookies. Your house smells divine, and everyone is standing in the kitchen waiting for those cookies to come out, because they are absolutely wonderful. Look at this plate. Let me tell you. These cookies are so good, and they're soft and yet firm, and you know what? They have certainly done a great job of making those apples look really good. So from those little gala apples to these apple oatmeal cookies, you're going to have your family giving you hugs and kisses all day. Now, you know, guys, I am so glad that you spent today in the kitchen with me. We have had such a good time. I hope that you will come back to the channel and that you will watch other videos as well. I hope that you and your family are safe and blessed, and I will see you very soon right here in the kitchen of Ebony, Ivy, and Thyme, where we work hard. We love God and family, and we know without a doubt that everything else is just gravy. Have a wonderful evening.